Hey, girlfriend.
Hey, girlfriend.
Let's talk about our favorite things that
Mm,
girlfriends of a certain age need to be getting into. We've got some books, some podcasts, some things that are lighting us up.
yes.
So, my first one is Dr. Ramani. Have
Mm,
you heard of her?
I adore her. I was listening to her this morning.
Yes. Dr. Ramani, shout out to you. You are healing millions of people who have been recovering from the experience of attracting a lot of narcissists in our lives. And
Yeah.
that's one of the gifts she gave me was that I was always like so focused on narcissists are bad and evil and dangerous and they are all of those things.
Mhm.
But I attracted
Yeah.
these people into my life. I gave them a soft, warm place to land, right?
Sure.
So, Girlfriend has a new book out called It's Not You.
Oh,
Go get it. The link is in our description. It is required reading, I think, for humanity because it's so helpful
mm.
to help us let go of this dynamic, this relationship of attracting difficult people into our lives and letting them cause harm.
I love that. And we have to remember that we're wired for that, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
familiar, and what is familiar isn't always healthy. And I love Dr. Ramani. I'm so glad you brought her up. She also has a YouTube channel and she has a podcast. I was listening to an interview with an author, and the title was Codependency, which is totally
Ah.
related to this idea of what do you do once you've been around a narcissist and you're sort of trained? How do you break that cycle? And she's just so wonderful at talking about all of these issues. And oh, I love her. I think she's also a girlfriend of a certain
She's
age.
also a girlfriend of a certain age. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
she's a trained psychologist and she just has all the smarts, all the letters after her name to make it so easy for us to understand. She's looking at the research.
Yeah.
She's the one who taught me that like sometimes narcissists, you can kind of spot them by their eyebrows. She was the
Oh,
one. She's got a whole. Just you could YouTube Dr. Ramani
yeah.
eyebrows, and she talking about the research about it, and I just love it. So again, it's not about demonizing, but it's about keeping
Mhm.
ourselves safe,
Yeah.
and but more importantly, it's about healing from this dynamic. And she has given me so much. So just I want to thank you, Dr. Ramani, from the bottom of my heart, for helping me to understand these dynamics and these relationships, my part
Mm.
in it,
Hmm.
and then the forgiveness of myself and others, and how to stay safe moving forward.
I love that so much. That is so beautiful.
Yeah. What have you got?
Well, my first recommendation is an audiobook, which I have fallen in love with. And for anyone who is a Spotify subscriber, you can now get free audiobooks. So it used to just be podcasts, but now you can listen to full audiobooks. And I realize I've already listened to like four in the last 2 months. So for those of you who feel like maybe you're not reading as much, I just love it. And especially when it's memoirs and it's read to you by the person itself, it just doesn't get better than that. I
Mm.
know you're also a firm believer in getting them free from the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always look there first.
Yeah, which is really smart. But I just thought that that has been wonderful. So the book I'm recommending, read aloud by the author, is a memoir by Stephanie Foo, and it's called What My Bones Know, a memoir of healing from complex trauma.
Oh, oh my gosh, yes.
It is so fascinating for her to explain. She's a journalist, right? So she's totally curious about the subject, the science, all of the different treatments. She's tried them all out, and she shares her own personal experience from her childhood. She actually had a really traumatic abandonment by
Mm.
both parents at different stages of her teen years, and then her official diagnoses in her young adulthood of having complex PTSD
Mm. Whew.
and what it means. So we hear the word PTSD, and then she really explains what complex PTSD is, but she writes it so beautifully. It's so personal. She grew up in San Jose, California.
Oh, local, a
So
local
she's
girlfriend.
local. She has a really beautiful description of the culture of San Jose of the moment. Her parents were both immigrated from Malaysia, and so she has a really interesting perspective on what it means to be first generation. And there's just so much richness to it. She also, you might recognize from being in podcasts, This American Life. So she does some stories for them. So she's just beautiful with her words and with her language. And she really opens up her recovery journey to everyone. And I just found it so healing. In fact, near the end, she even opened up a couple of therapy sessions.
Wow.
And it's incredible to just be the fly on the wall and to listen.
That's incredible. So I haven't read this yet, but I will be. The
So
link
good.
for that will also be
Yes.
below. I really want to check that out. I've been thinking a lot lately too about how the culture does not understand what trauma is. And here I am trained as a therapist, and how little training I received in trauma.
Wow.
Actual, like, what are we looking for? So there was a little bit, it was covered. But would I have called myself an expert coming out of school? Not that anyone's an expert coming out of school, but really, it wasn't even like, you should keep going with this. This is probably the most important thing you'll need as a therapist. There was no discussion of that. It was just like, we're letting you loose. Good luck.
Yeah.
And so I really
Fascinating.
question how much the culture knows about trauma. And then, especially for women.
Oh my
How
gosh.
many traumas have you and I alone collectively endured, where there's no understanding about how do we heal, how do we correct, how do we heal the harm that's
Absolutely.
been done?
How does it manifest itself? She's really interesting in discussing the different ways that it manifests itself in women of color, in different groups. I mean, it is just fascinating.
This is such a needed conversation.
It's a healing for everyone.
Oh my
Even though her
gosh.
case is extreme, she makes it highly relatable. And I think we're really learning, like the narcissism, about PTSD and the levels of trauma that our body holds on to, that our mind holds on to, how it shapes us, but also how healing things can be. So yeah, it's a fantastic read, and if you can have her read it to you, she does a
So you
wonderful job.
actually actively recommend the audio version.
I think it's brilliant. She's just a trained podcaster, and she just reads it so well. But you could also read it and totally get a lot out of it too.
Awesome. Well, you touched on how I like getting it from the library, so I just want to remind girlfriends, if you have a library card, you get the app Libby or Hoopla, and you can get audio books for free downloaded to your phone to hold on to for 21 days. So I always start there
So smart.
before I go and buy one on Audible. But I mean, I buy books on Audible too, but it's usually like a last resort because you can often get these for free. You might have to wait a week or two to get them, but I mean, this sounds beautiful.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
All right. Well, my next one is a podcast. She's also an author. Maybe you've heard of her, but my girl Mel Robbins. I have literally never heard a message from her where I wasn't like, yes, yes. And she's getting deeper and deeper. And she's starting to talk about spirituality and talking about manifesting. Girlfriend is bringing it, and she brings so much truth and warmth and honesty. I love her little social media posts of herself in bed, just, like all tired. She's doing something that I think all wish everybody was doing.
Yes.
Not that I want to see everybody what they look like in bed, but I'm tired of the glossy.
Yes.
I'm tired of the filters and just changing
Right.
the way we look just for a certain post. I love that she's bringing something more real and raw.
She's like the realism influencer and of our age group, right? Like she's bringing the rawness of like, this is me with no makeup. This is me tired. This is me at the end of my rope. She's very honest.
Me in financial trouble. Me and my marriage not being the hot, sexy thing that it might look like on the outside. Me as she's an empty nester now.
Yes.
Her son is graduating from high school any day now. And so she's talking about that next stage of her life.
She talks openly about ADHD, which I think is
Yes.
really great because also another thing that so many women aren't diagnosed with until they're adults. It's very undiagnosed and misunderstood in women. So she's really interesting about that topic as well.
Absolutely. So I am I'm the first one to admit that I am a self-help junkie. Ever since I learned about what that is, I have been. So like in my late teens, I was like reading these kinds of books. But Mel Robbins makes it so accessible, so easy. And girlfriend is just on a tear right now. She is just talking about everything and she's everywhere. And I feel the healing. And I want to remind everybody that she's there. And these podcasts are out there for free for us to go listen to. So if there's anything that you're struggling with, our girl Mel probably has the answer for you.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Okay, well, my second recommendation is actually for a show, and this goes a little against my brand, which is typically bringing the heavy. And even though I have lots of true crime and traumatic documentaries that I would equally love to recommend to all of you girlfriends, I get a lot of feedback that I'm usually recommending the heaviest topics to people. So I'm going out on a limb. I am stretching myself a little bit and telling that all of our girlfriends that we need to go watch Girls 5 Eva. That is now available on Netflix. So I wasn't able to watch it. It was first on Peacock, but I heard about it and my antenna went up about this singing group from like the 90s who are back in their 40s, a girl band group, and that are trying to like come together again and recatch the fire that they had. And it is hysterical. The actors in it are delightful. Stephen Colbert, Sarah Bareilles, many other people. The writing is so good, and it's just great at talking about aging in a very healing, funny way that is like, we're in on the joke, right? We are not the joke. We are in on it. And it is just so silly. It's comic relief. We're all going through all kinds of things. We're recording today on April 15th. It's tax day.
Happy tax day.
Trump starts his trial. Like, there's just so much endless stuff that is very easy, I think, to get bogged down by. And I think some levity is really needed. So I've just been making a concerted effort myself, even though I see, depressing documentary. Maybe watch a Girls 5 Eva to balance that out. They're short episodes and they're just hilarious.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. So I've watched the first episode and it is really fun. But I got distracted by what I'm going to recommend next, actually. I like aborted Girls 5 Eva. I'm like, girls, I'll be back.
Yes.
I'm coming back. You're
Come
in my
back for
queue.
the girls.
But it is so fun. There was something about it, like, this kind of speaks to me. So I do need to get back into it. So
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder.
It's so silly. It's so great. Yeah. And it builds. Each episode, you get a little more connected to the characters. So it's very, very silly.
Oh, I love that. All right. Well, then I will share my final recommendation, and we want to hear yours.
Yes.
Is on Netflix. So I was getting into Girls 5 Eva, and then I got distracted by Sex and the City being back on Netflix, y'all. Whoa. Okay, so I must admit, there was a time when I owned the box set. My dad gave it to me. I was living alone. I don't think I could afford HBO at the time. So I was like, will you invite me over to see Sex and the City? Will you invite me over? When it ended, my dad gets me the box set because it turned out I had not seen all the episodes. I had missed a few here and there, begging friends and family to let me over on Sunday nights to watch it. I don't even know how many times I watched the whole box set, 30, 50, I don't know.
Oh my God.
It's a problem. It was a problem. But there was something about it that really spoke to me. And I think coming of age at this time when women are talking about being more open with their sexuality, having sex like men, flipping that script that women are sitting at home waiting. I don't know. I really was coming into my empowerment, living alone in my early 20s. And I was like, yeah, this feels good. I love this new way for women to be in the world. And it was a very, it was a lot of escapism, a way to like just kind of disappear into this other world. But now with the new episodes out of Just Like That, now, I'm the first one to admit the writing is not amazing. So it's not like I'm saying you've got to see it if you haven't seen it. But there's something about watching these women who I really identified with as a young woman myself coming into my own, watching them now be through menopause and have their gray hair and the midlife issues that they're coming up with. It really speaks to me. So it's been another guilty pleasure. And I don't even have HBO right now.
Is that available? Is the new series
No.
available on Netflix?
No.
No. So the old school one. If you want to
Old
get caught up
school
on the
one.
old school one.
But I've just been watching it. I can't stop.
I love that.
love it. It interrupted my girls' five Eva. But there's something about, and I feel like we're going through, I don't know, this is me a little bit getting a little bit weird, but I do feel like we're at a stage in our lives where it's a really good time to go back and heal some of the old wounds.
Yes.
And I see Sex in the City so differently now. Dr. Ramani did a whole episode on Sex in the City and who she thought was the biggest narcissist.
Oh, that's funny.
I won't spoil it for you because I think Dr. Ramani, needs to get to share all that in all of her glory. But I realized, oh, right, I was working some stuff out, watching some of their narcissism
Yes.
and the narcissistic relationships that they were getting into. And so now to see that in midlife. So it's like my little guilty pleasure.
I love that.
So I will just leave it at that.
Well, and my confession is I never got the bug. And now that you bring up that it was on HBO, I'm like, oh my God, in my 20s, I didn't have HBO. I couldn't afford HBO, so no wonder I missed. I remember a friend showing me one episode and just saying, isn't this hysterical? And I think it was like Kim Cattrall and she's having an orgasm. And I'm just like, I was a little caught off guard. I didn't know what I was watching. I was like, who are all of these fancy ladies in New York? Like, getting off all the time. But I think that now that it's on Netflix, I will watch it. And it'll be so interesting to see it all these years later and to see if at this point in my life, like how I relate to these women. Because for whatever reason in my 20s, it wasn't something that reached out and grabbed me. Again, it might have just been HBO, but it could have been something else. So I love that it's available for us to reflect on. And there's such a resurgence of looking at things in the 90s, in that era, in our sort of coming of age. And it's funny too, because young kids are dressing like the 90s right now, right?
Like it's retro?
Oh my God, yes. These low jeans and then the midriff stuff. And I'm like, oh God, we were doing that too. Like all the trends are back.
I even heard recently that eyebrows getting skinnier is getting to be on trend again.
Young ladies,
you and I are
though.
still trying to recover from that.
Careful, y'all. Don't overpluck. Girlfriends of a certain age can warn you. And my mom told me, and even still, I was like, whatever, mom, pluck, 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 pluck.
We're now in our 50s. We're like, I'm like putting castor oil on my eyebrows, trying to get them to grow back.
Oh, I know. It's a thing. Yeah. So careful how far you take the whole 90s fad. It's just a fad.
Some trends you'll be stuck with for a while.
So I love that recommendation because that's such a fun thing to, if you haven't seen it, jump on the bandwagon or not with Sex in the City or revisit it to see how it lands for you now. There's a lot of stuff that we're looking at now going, wow, those times sure were different.
It's so true. I love this. I love talking, but I have so many more books and podcasts and movies and things I want to recommend. So this was our kickoff for season 5.
And I have one more.
Oh, you have one more?
Yeah, yeah. That's my third recommendation.
I'm ready to wrap things up. I'm like, this feels very complete.
No. We got one more for you.
Go for it.
Okay. So I do have one final podcast that is highlighting 2 women who I think are marvelous. So this is the On Being podcast hosted by Krista Tippett. Krista is a beautiful interviewer. She runs this podcast where they interview great thinkers, lots of authors, lots of poets, and it's all about humanity. Sometimes she ties in religion, but in a way to look at kind of like the bigger questions of life. And it is so moving. It's like a podcast for the soul. Sometimes when I'm hiking in the redwoods by myself, I'll listen to one of those podcasts because I feel like it's a way to like really tune in to some of the big, questions of the universe. And I want to highlight one particular episode, which was when she was interviewing, and this was a live podcast interview. She was interviewing the wonderful author Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote the book Caste, about our own caste system in America, and she compares it through a really interesting analysis to the caste system in India and to Nazi Germany and what was happening then. And she shares all of these parallels. Their conversation is so beautiful. It's so healing and provocative. It asks questions. Isabel does a really beautiful job of kind of talking about our country as an old house and how our old house
It's a little creaky.
is a lot creaky. And we need to do some stuff that isn't fun. Like we need to kind of like redo the foundation. We need to redo some parts of it that are not at all the fun stuff. And we'd much rather put our budget towards other things, but this is what needs to get done. And they have just such a wonderful open discourse about what has happened and what is possible. And I think in this era where all these things are being brought up about the American history and about critical race theory and all of these things, I think this is how we can reflect on what's happened in the most like beautiful way possible between two people having a real conversation, having people witness them. And I think it's just beautiful. So that is my recommendation on Being podcast with Krista Tippett, and in particular, and I'll put this link. This link is in our show notes with the wonderful author Isabel Wilkerson.
Oh, so I have not heard of this podcast, so I certainly haven't heard this conversation. I'm so excited to go check those out.
So beautiful. So wonderful. Yeah.
I'm so sorry for the steamrolling over
don't worry.
your last
No,
one.
we went off on a Sex and the City tangent. It's all good.
Thank you for forgiving me.
And we wanted to talk about this as if we're at a dinner party or having drinks with our circle of girlfriends, right? It's like, this is what we live for, right? Is sharing the latest, book or product or, pain medicine that's helping us the most these days.
It's so true. It's so true. So girlfriends, have you listened or watched any of these? I would love to hear your feedback. Leave us a comment. We respond to everything.
We sure do.
And join us on Substack. We are building a thriving community there of girlfriends of a certain age, and we would love to have you there with us. And so season 5, y'all, we're here.
Season 5.
We're so excited. We have so much good stuff to share with you.
Yeah, we do. Thanks so much for listening, girlfriend. Yeah, and in Substack, let us know what you would recommend. What is lighting you up? What is the thing that you're reading or listening to that you feel like, oh my gosh, y'all need to know about this? We would love to hear about your recommendations, and we might even shout you out on another pod episode. All right. Well, until next time, girlfriends.
Bye.
Bye.